Do we even like sleeves? Do we even need sleeves? Speaking as someone who's lost nights of sleep now in anticipation of getting a pair of the things on my wedding suit jacket, I'll confess I've had some moments of deep, sleevey doubt, but that just won't do. And besides, you can't actually attach a sleeve to a jacket without having made said sleeve first, so that's what we're going to do today. We're talking vents, we're talking linings, we're talking mitered corners. It's basically like a microcosm of an entire jacket. Anyway, I wonder how I'll get on. Okie dokie. But so this is the sort of the back arm seam, this is the inner arm seam, and that's what I'm going to sew first. And you can see here, these are the sort of vent allowances that I've left. And I'm only going to do one cuff button, I've decided, because I'm extremely lazy. I don't think I have to reiterate that at this stage. Yeah, so this is relatively shallow. That's going to be the hemline folded up there. And there'll really just be this sort of maybe 2 inches or so, 5-6 centimeters of vent allowance there on the cuff. Now, it had been my dream today to actually complete the sleeves fully, so, you know, both make them and attach them. But, you know, it's a beautiful day outside. I'd like to enjoy the afternoon out and about. And, you know, in the Blue Peter spirit, I was kind of doing the practice run on the other sleeve yesterday, attaching it, and things just got a little bit out of hand because I was trying to get it done very quickly. And as we've learned in previous episodes, that tends not to be conducive to the best quality of sewing. So we'll attach them next week. For now, just showing you how to make them. If I can, that is. Don't seem to be doing a very good job. The construction of the sleeves itself can actually be quite a chill affair. As with, what did we do last week? As with the collar, it's kind of a fair amount of just sitting at the desk and hand sewing things together, which, as we know, is how I like to live my life. The vents can sometimes be a bit fiddly. I mean, we've already seen one vent go awry this jacket, but I have a good feeling about this. That's you done for now. Just trimming this extra centimetre off the undersleeve cuff, because typically when I was cutting them out, I wanted to have 5 centimetres hem allowance, but I ended up not leaving enough space, I think, with the top sleeves, so I decided to reduce it to 4 centimetres. No great shakes, 4 centimetres is plenty, but that's why they're mismatched, and I just need to match them now. I was going to land in my coffee then. And as I'm sure you've guessed, it's time to press this seam open. So now I need to just reinforce the cuff area, because that's where the action is going to be happening. And as ever, what I've got here for that purpose is a strip of pocketing, again cut on the bias this time, because we're going to steam work it in a second, as you can see. First, I'm just going to mark on where exactly this needs to go. I'm going to do this on the right side, because otherwise the pocketing is going to end up covering up the markings. So what do I need to mark? First, just my 4 centimetres hem allowance. Dear me. And then like that. Oh, that's not very good. Not exactly a Da Vinci. If you see the sleeve has this sort of slightly V-shaped shape, we're going to need to match that with the pocketing. That's what we're going to steam work it. What else do we need? So on the undersleeve, this vent bit is the bit that's going to jut out, and we need that to be reinforced as well. So I'm just going to mark literally the 1 centimetre of seam allowance on the very edge. That is going to get folded over, and that doesn't need a reinforcement. And then here on the top sleeve, this is just going to follow the hypothetical stitch line. I mean, this isn't going to get stitched because it's going to be a vent, but I'm just going to reinforce up to where the stitch would theoretically continue. So like that. And then, yeah, just for sanity's sake, I'll just mark along parallel with the top of the vent itself. So this strip would be as tall as the vent itself would be, so from the hemline up to, yeah, top of the vent, and then as wide as would need to be in order to sort of span whatever this distance ends up being in your case. I don't know what's going on there. Doesn't really look very good, does it? But we'll work it out. Okay, now it's time to ironwork this bad boy. So again, this is cut on the bias. It's going to be a bit more amenable to stretching and manipulation. Got my steam iron here. Do I? Try and remember to turn on your iron. It usually helps. And yeah, it's not a very strong curve that we need to create, just enough to match that angle, that sort of V-shapeness, triangularity that the sleeve itself has, that the cuff itself has. Yeah, kind of basically the same sort of thing that I did with the collar last week, just sort of pulling the outer edge while just trying to shrink the inner edge. Yeah, I mean, the mysteries of ironwork are still just that to me, to be honest. It's definitely something I want to research more into. But you can see there, we have a sort of respectable curve. I think maybe just a touch more. And voila. Back to the drawing board. Not the drawing board, you know what I mean. Job well done for once in my miserable life. I know this is more or less the position I want it to have, only obviously it needs to be going on the underside. Just position it first, and then I'm just going to pin it in the middle. And you know what? Just for good measure, I'm going to pin it at the sides as well. And then again, just base through from the top side along those chalk markings I did so that I can see what I'm doing. It's a thing I said last week. I give myself 1 day a week to film these videos. just for, you know, scheduling reasons. And so it's been quite interesting trying to divide this whole process up into steps where the sewing that is involved is manageable in that 1 day time frame, but also it kind of makes sense as like a thematic episode, you know. I think definitely at the start of the series I was maybe, you know, just sort of trying to get a bit too much done all at once, and did take a little bit of the fun out of it, and perhaps worst of all, just made me a bit more mistake prone than I like to think I would otherwise have been. I had wanted to do the sleeves in full today and just kind of pretty much get the jacket construction completed, but while trying to sort of do the other one yesterday, which I think I've just about sorted now, and obviously I'm not going to show you, you're going to have to wait till next week for that little surprise. It just got a little bit hectic, and I realised that probably it would be a bit of a scramble to get it done at all today in the time I have, never mind done to the quality to which my viewers are accustomed. But yeah, doing the sleeves always has this sort of, as I think I've alluded to, it's sort of like final boss battle feeling to it, where you know they're coming, you're very excited to get it done because then you know that the construction will be truly completed and you can actually put on the jacket, or, you know, have whoever it's made for put it on and just truly see the fruits of your labours. And I always grumble about it because it's like one of these steps where if you've ever set in a sleeve before, it's very fiddly, and it can often take 2 or 3 goes, and in that regard it's quite stressful, often feels quite stressful, when in reality, you know, it doesn't necessarily take ages. I mean, you know, pad stitching the lapel, for instance, is probably the longest individual step in this whole process. I think that took me like basically almost like an hour and a half to do, or an hour. But you know, there's some processes like that where they take very long, but they're very kind of easy and repetitive, and there's no individual moment where you're really sort of scrambling around and like, oh my God, it all hinges on how exactly I can do this in this particular moment. It's really just sort of like 15 to 20 minutes of just constant high tension. And I just decided, you know what? I don't want the stress. You don't want the stress. I hope you don't want the stress. Maybe you do want the stress. Today can be instead a nice, relaxing hand construction of the sleeve, and then next week I can just take my time with setting it in and getting everything really finished off. Pretty pitiful sight, isn't it, really? I've said it before, I'll say it again. The pleasure of making your own clothes is that you merely need to satisfy your own miserable, pathetic standards. As they say in Italy, perfecto. Okay, so that's how it looks on the other side. If you need to, you would then trim this edge of pocketing on the undersleeve to be basically flush with that line you drew that should correspond to the basting. This is fine in my case, so I'm just going to leave it. But on the top sleeve, just want to trim that so that's, again, even with where the cutting edge of the top sleeve would be if there were no vent. So in this case, it's just one, because I have 1 centimetre seam allowance, just 1 centimetre. Yeah, no one reminded me to sharpen my fabric shears, so... Okay, so now I've got some pressing and folding to do, and just corresponding really with the chalk lines I've drawn. So here on the top sleeve, I'm not just going to fold it over here according with that cutting edge, I'm actually going to fold it even further over so that it really is folded along that chalk mark, and the seam allowance here is going to kind of roll over, and that's okay, we're just going to leave it as is for now. And then on the far side, the undersleeve side, literally just this little 1 centimetre that I left, I'm just going to fold and press that over as well. And then once they're folded and pressed, I'm going to fold up and press the hem. And then most excitingly of all, I'm going to then miter this corner. That's going to be folded over like that. This is going to fold it like that. And then I'm just going to triangularly tuck this underneath. And again, this is a light fabric. I'm not really worried about the extra bulk. And also, should I ever want to extend the sleeve, if I get arm lengthening surgery or something like that, then that extra fabric will be there untouched, rather than, you know, me having trimmed it away in order to reduce that bulk. Because that bulk is not going to be significant, it's not going to matter. If you had a heavier fabric, you might want to reconsider that aspect of it, but in my case, I'm chilling. So we'll start first again with the top vent, top sleeve. So for now, just pressing that over, and then the undersleeve vent. So again, really just this 1 centimetre bit around here, flap that I left, and then just the hem. So now we're going to do the old miter job here. So really just got this quadratic, this rectangular situation going on here, just everything folded over flat in lines. So I'm just going to take this triangle a little bit, fold it under like that, and that's just going to help keep it away, keep this sort of edge away from the actual top vent edge, and also just again add a nice little bit of structure. There we have it, something like that. Back to the table. So now I get to have a little break and just do some hand sewing. So if you can see there, it's all folded over in the way I want it to. And by hand sewing it, I'll just be able to massage these edges a little bit further away from the actual edge so that it's not really sticking out like that. So with my proper garment thread, this isn't actually my silk finishing thread because I'm running low and I need to save it for the actual finishing jobs. It's my cotton imitation silk thread. Anyway, so I'm just kind of diagonal stitching here the edges of the vents and then the hem into the pocketing, and only the pocketing, so not going through to the other side of the sleeve. And yeah, I don't know how many times I have to say it, but this is the stuff where I can just feel my brain melting into a happy, meditative state. You know, you got to enjoy the calm before the storms, haven't you? Calm before the sleeves. I mean, again, I feel like I say this every week, but we are now really getting towards the final stretch of this whole saga, at least with the jacket. And I do think, you know, the most important thing has always been, you know, I'm not kidding myself that I can sit down and just make the perfect jacket in every respect, but as long as I can make it better than the last one. And I think already I've proven to myself, partly also through just using, you know, with the canvas and stuff, the proper materials, that yeah, like this is going to turn out better than the last one I made. And I think that's enough for it to feel like a success. It's been a very interesting experience talking through the process while doing it. I think the process of making these videos has made me think a lot about sewing in general and why I like to sew. I don't know, I'm acting as if someone asked me this question, but you know, you're literally watching me hand sew a hem. You obviously have powers of patience that will allow you to endure my rambling. It's funny with these extensive hand sewing jobs how, like, you know, it's kind of precisely the thing that I think a lot of sewing processes are kind of designed to avoid. That's a good thing. There's no need for things to just be done by hand for the sake of it. With this kind of clothing where there are clear benefits to doing things by hand, very quickly I think find yourself just like really kind of falling in love with it and viewing what seemed like a sort of necessary evil as actually like one of the most fun parts of the whole shebang. Yeah, proof that I do have a pair of these, by the way. Now we've got these flappy ends that I just need to slip stitch. Yeah, as one viewer commented about basting specifically, it just makes you feel like a proper tailor. I think that's part of the charm of it. It makes you feel like you're in your own little bespoke tailoring ASMR video until you look at the actual quality of your stitches and realise that you should be behind bars in sewing jail. It's kind of nice and clean now. And again, speaking of the advantages of hand sewing, obviously I have this folded over here and these two edges are right at each other, but this is an edge that is going to show. So I really kind of want to just pull this in a bit, in just a tiny bit, so that it's away from the showing edge. And you know, it's just very easy when sewing by hand to achieve an effect like that. Same again, just do a slip stitch, or something akin to a slip stitch. You do you. And so that is our cuff more or less constructed. Okay, so now that the cuff's done, we can start thinking about closing this seam as well. But we're going to start from the bottom of the vent and first kind of just baste these edges together. So the vent is going to be closed while we sew the seam. And again, bearing in mind that this seam allowance here is kind of trying to roll over. We're not going to snip it. Don't want that because there's going to be a lot of busyness around this point. We don't want to weaken the seam. But yeah, still trying to make sure that that is lined up as well as possible. Say as well as possible. I don't know why I always make these weird qualifications. It should be lined up. Take your time. Get it lined up. A lot of my personality is just like, if it's good enough, it's good enough. Guess we all have differing opinions on that. I am what I am. Okay, so you see there, that's going to fold under there. That's the undersleeve and form that vent underlay. Underlay. Pardon me to all the Spanish speakers out there. So for now, really just sort of shutting this vent closed so it doesn't wiggle around. But I am just going to stop, I think, a good centimetre or so below the top of the vent because I'm going to want to get in there in a minute when I sew the seam, and I don't want to, you know, cause any problems for myself, giving myself any headaches. No, I only do that by accident, never on purpose. Yeah, I have this terrible habit often of instead of basting just inside or outside of where the actual seam is going to go, just basting bang along right where I do need to sew, meaning that I then sew over my basting and then have to spend ages and ages trying to pick it all out. Friends and family tell me if I don't kick this habit soon, they're going to cut me out of their lives. Is that like a centimetre to you? I think they'll be proud of me. It's going to be quite fiddly here because I'm going to have to try and get in there to go down about a centimetre or so beyond the top of the vent. But I think we can hack it. I say we because I mean I think lots of you could do it, but I'm not sure if I can. Ooh. Just about got it. Yeah, I'd say so. All right, get rid of the basting and press that seam open. So we now have these two vent pieces sort of lying flat on top of each other, and I just want to attach them at the top. I'm just going to do that with a hand back stitch across the top. All right, that ought to do it. Now it's time to return to our precious, precious lining. Okay, so I've got my lining pieces here, and again, these were just drafted based on the patterns I had for the sleeves themselves, with just tactical excess in certain areas. Tactical excess, interesting, okay. Along all the sides, just an extra 0.5 centimeters. Along the tops, an extra inch. So along there and along there. obviously the hem allowances, no vent on the top sleeve, just on the bottom sleeve, just on the undersleeve, and indeed I've added I've added an extra, I think 1.5 centimeters to the 4.5 centimeter width seam allowance, vent allowance rather, it was already there. For now, I really just need to sew this together into a functional sleeve, so I'm just gonna pin it. And because with the lining vent, as with the sleeve vent, we don't want to sew all the way down, we want to stop and leave the allowance. That's what I'm gonna do. Now, we may recall when I sewed the jacket vent, I went to great pains to sort of calculate in the abstract how far I need to sew down to achieve the same effect, rather than just literally measuring the thing that I had. So that's what I'm going to do. How high does this need to be beyond the hem allowance? Okay, that's 6 centimeters, so this needs to be 6 centimeters above its hem. Something like that. Except it isn't, because I forgot there's an extra 0.5 to the hem allowance on these, so I think that's right. You know what? Ballpark. Perhaps that's the laissez-faire attitude that's seen me do this 5 times already and get it correct precisely 0. No, I wouldn't have thought so. Okay, let's bring these babies to life. Swerving around the place like a Formula 1 driver. I always love it when you lay 2 pieces together to sew a seam and they're supposed to be the same length and there's just like inexplicably half an inch of excess on one end. Whose fault could that be? Alright, so I'll go and press these open now. My beauties, it's time to put them together, and it's pretty funky just how that's going to happen. So first I'm going to lay these on top of each other, wrong sides to wrong sides, and we're going to focus on this outer seam here first and kind of flatten these seam allowances against each other like that. Okay, so those are lined up now, and what we're going to do is baste from about 10 centimeters below, because we still want a bit of maneuverability up there. We don't want it fully closed up. I'm going to baste these 2 bits of seam allowance into each other. So again, these seams are laying sort of face to face, and this will actually be a kind of permanent stitch. I don't know why, there's something about this solution, this technique, that strikes me as very elegant conceptually. I just like the idea of repurposing the seam allowance, just otherwise kind of, I guess, in a way, a necessary evil. Not there's really anything diabolical about it, but you know. So again, this is where they start to curve under again, so I'll let it go there. Same again just with the other seam. And there you have it. Now I'm just going to trim the bottom of this so there's only about an inch or so showing, because we don't want too much of it folded up in the cuff. It's just going to add unnecessary bulk. Ooh. Yoink. Cool. Now, would you like to see a magic trick? I'm going to go into the lining and pull through to the other side, the sleeve. Right ways out, baby. So let's find our vent then, shall we? Somewhere in here. There we go. So this begins the slightly fiddly stuff. So what we've got here, that's the under vent, and that's the over vent, as it were. So obviously when we turn it right side out, what's shown will be reversed. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this bit of lining over and I'm going to baste it along the edge of the under vent there, just to hold that in place. And again, because this is quite a shallow vent, and because this is also going to get folded under for the hem, I'm only just going to baste it actually 1 or 2 stitches. I think that already will do. And then speaking of the hem, so what I've done now is I've folded that under to leave about 2 centimeters of the actual garment cuff showing, and I'm just basting it up, but still leaving again and maybe another 2 centimeters at the lining hem edge, so that I can properly hem stitch that at some point later on. Who knows when? Whenever I feel like it. Yeah, so basting through all layers around the whole way, although I will stop before the this other vent edge to give ample space to do what I got to do. And indeed, we are approaching the bit that I always get wrong. But I think I've worked it out now, we'll see. Okay, so what have we got here? That's the under vent that I've already nailed down, as it were. This is the, I guess, over vent, top vent. Funnily enough, having said a moment ago that I'm pretty sure I understood, I just looked at the instruction again and I've actually changed my mind. I think now I've understood, but I think about 10 seconds ago I was technically mistaken when I said that I had. Let's find out, shall we? What we want, obviously, is for this bit to kind of come over and avoid the under vent, but in an elegant way. And to do this, we're going to have to get a little bit snippy. Going this way, about 1.5 centimeters below the lining vent seam, and not really any further than the actual edge of the vent, which I can feel is about there. I am just going to snip, folks, pray for me. So it's kind of like with the back vent on the jacket itself. This is just going to come over diagonally, I'm going to baste that in place, and then it's going to, thanks to that snip I've done, I can just fold it down, just go around the edge of that top vent. So I'll baste that in place, and I think it'll be a bit clearer what I mean. I think I've technically done it sort of correct. At the last gasp, 10 seconds before doing it, I finally, after 6 tries, worked it out. So that's folded over now, all those raw edges are tucked under, the hem is tucked under, And again, if you were to do a cuff with, say, more like, 3 or 4 buttons, this vent would be higher and there would be more of this effect visible. Can't believe I'm saying this. I'm pretty pleased with this. You can also do, really just any hand stitch you'd like to attach this, I guess. But prick stitches are fun. A fun trick with stitches like this where you don't want to have any visible knot on top, obviously, but you also can't really get at wherever you would hide away that, that knot, that end of the thread, is you just sort of back stitch, secure it. Again, obviously not going through to any right sides. Come out some distance away like that. And then just applying a little bit of pressure on this thread, so pulling so that it's really taut. You snip right at the bottom. And then when that pressure is released, that back stitch is hidden inside of wherever, Pretty snazzy, eh? Not my invention, obviously. There you have it. That's kind of the finished vent, basically. I'm just going to press this hem around. I'm not going to do the hem stitching today. I'm going to do that at the very end. I'm so euphoric I haven't gotten this correct that I just want to go and, enjoy the sunshine. Yeah, sucks to be you guys, I guess. One last step for security's sake before we call it a day. We're going to turn the sleeve right side out again. Try and get everything lined up. So now that that's done, I'm just going to quickly press a very soft crease into this bit here, so from sort of the elbow down to the hem, just in the top sleeve. And that, folks, is that for today. Yeah, as ever, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, I think you know what to do. And if you're not already a member of our exclusive subscriber base, you can click the big subscribe button at the bottom and join free of charge. If you're only just checking in on the wedding suit journey for the first time, you can click here for episode 1. Otherwise, if it's next week already, you can find in place of that the fateful sleeve setting episode. And if you're new to sewing and you're wondering why on earth people bother with this sort of thing, you can click here and find my 3 reasons why. Or else, indeed, if you're a lapsed sewist, you can renew your faith. Till then, thanks for watching. Have a good one.